Stop everything right now. This is not just a message. It's a divine recognition. I need you to understand this before the enemy convinces you otherwise. My beloved child, I saw you when no one else did. I heard your weeping behind closed doors, where you thought no one was watching. But I was there. I didn't just observe, I felt your pain as if it were my own. Every tear that fell from your eyes became a drop of divine gold in heaven's storehouse. You cried silently because your heart couldn't hold the weight any longer, and yet, even in those moments, you didn't turn away from me. Instead, you collapsed into my presence, not with loud words but with silent agony, and that moved heaven. The world may have ignored your sorrow, but I documented every tear. I assigned angels to minister to you in the dark. You weren't forgotten. You were being cradled in invisible arms. And even now, as I speak to you, those tears are not wasted. They are seeds, and I am watering them with my joy. But I need you to stop doubting your worth. I need you to understand that those tears are evidence of your depth, your trust, and your fight. The enemy wants to shame you for your pain, but I celebrate you for feeling, for enduring, and for releasing what you could no longer carry. This is urgent. Do not hide your heart anymore. Don't cover the wound I'm trying to heal. Your tears were never weakness. They were signals to heaven that you still believe I'm the only one who understands you completely. I'm not ashamed of your broken moments, I'm proud of them. You kept calling out even when the only answer you received was silence. That's what made all of heaven lean in. That's what stirred my spirit into motion. That's why your story is not over. I will bring beauty from those tears, and joy will rise where grief once laid its head. Hold on, because the chapter where I redeem every drop is about to begin, and you're going to need tissues, but not for tears of sorrow this time. This time, they will be tears of astonishment. Before you collapse under the weight you've been carrying, hear this: what you did in exhaustion was not missed by me. You were closer to heaven than you realized. My beloved child, I was there in the moments when your body was trembling, your mind was weary, and your soul felt like it was dragging behind you. You kept walking even when the ground beneath your feet seemed to disappear. I watched how you forced one more step, not out of ease, but out of faith. You didn't realize it then, but you were walking on a miracle. Not every miracle feels like healing. Some miracles are found in endurance, in perseverance, in the strength to take one more breath when giving up would have been easier. I know what it cost you. I know that you weren't operating from abundance, you were surviving on fumes. And yet you never surrendered to defeat. That moment, when you felt you had nothing left to give, was when I stepped in and carried you, even though you couldn't feel it. I lifted your spirit even while your body stayed weak. You didn't collapse because I had already undergirded you with divine strength. And now, I must tell you this with urgency. Your struggle wasn't a sign of failure, it was a divine testimony in the making. I was taking notes in those silent seconds. All of heaven took notice when you pressed on. Your enemies assumed you'd break, but I had already ordained you to bend without snapping. And even though no one clapped for you or acknowledged your quiet bravery, I was standing beside you, whispering, "Well done, my faithful one. You survived more than they'll ever know, and your resilience is now your weapon." You didn't win because of energy, you won because of resolve. This is what I'm celebrating right now. You didn't retreat. When you felt unseen, unappreciated, and unfinished, you kept showing up. I'm telling you now, the reward that is coming is proportionate to the pain that didn't stop you. Your strength wasn't human. It was supernatural. That's why you didn't crumble. That's why you didn't lose your mind. And even though you may still feel tired today, I want you to lean into this truth. A fresh wind is on the way. What was once done in weakness will soon be followed by strength like you've never known. I saw your fight. I honored it. And now, I'm about to give you rest, not just physical rest, but deep soul rest, the kind that rejuvenates the parts of you you thought were gone forever. You are not weak, you are chosen. You are not failing. You are finishing. Keep holding on, your breakthrough isn't far. In fact, it's closer than the weariness trying to lie to you. Don't stop now, not when you've come this far. Your next miracle is being ushered in because you did give up when you had every reason to. My child, when the world grew loud and confusion circled your thoughts like a storm, you quieted yourself and turned your heart toward me. I remember how you resisted the urge to chase empty voices offering quick answers. You were tempted to follow the familiar paths that many take, the paths that appear easier, louder, more affirmed by crowds, but you paused. In the stillness, when distractions pulled at your focus, you chose to reach for my peace instead. That moment was more powerful than you realize. You didn't need applause to feel secure. You simply needed my presence, and you sought it. I saw how hard it was to pull yourself away from conversations that everyone else was running toward. While others fed their souls with opinions, noise, and comparison, you came away with me in silence and trust. And because of that sacred decision, you created space for me to dwell fully with you. I took delight in how you silenced your own thoughts to hear mine. You showed me that you didn't need the approval of many when my voice alone could satisfy your longing. That was not weakness, that was worship. And it changed things you could not see. While the noise tried to define you, distract you, and distort your direction, your spirit anchored itself in my words. And what it truly did was align you with the rhythm of heaven. Decisions you made from that quiet place of surrender began opening doors not crafted by human hands. Peace flowed in like a river because you allowed stillness to reign in a time when chaos tried to rule. I honored your ability to wait for my whisper instead of reacting to every sound around you. And because of this, you were guided by clarity, not confusion. You didn't follow the herd, you followed the shepherd. You didn't fall into urgency, you fell into trust. It changed the atmosphere around you more than you knew. While others wondered why their paths seemed scattered, you began to walk in an invisible order I orchestrated behind the scenes. It's not just that you made a good choice, you made a holy one. You allowed me to be the filter, and through that filter, I began to align your surroundings to match what your spirit was maturing into. The moment you picked me over the clamoring noise of the world, I began weaving favor into your future. What's unfolding in your life now is not coincidence, it's the result of that one beautiful act of prioritizing my voice over every other. Continue in that pattern, because every time you do, you draw nearer to me. And when you're near me, nothing can shake you. The voices that once competed for your attention will lose their grip, and the clarity I release will fill every uncertain space. Your spiritual hearing has sharpened, and that will lead you into decisions that reflect heaven's timing, not man's pressure. You have chosen the better portion, and no one will take it from you. I am building something new in your life, because you gave me your attention when it mattered most. Stay here with me, in this quiet center, where truth replaces confusion and peace overrides pressure. You chose well, and now, I will show you just how much that one choice redirected everything. I watched you during the nights when shadows seemed to stretch endlessly, when hope felt like a distant memory and silence wrapped itself around your heart like a cold blanket. It was in those hidden hours that your quiet resolve amazed me. You were surrounded by heaviness, thoughts that tried to convince you there was no light left for you, yet you didn't surrender. Though it would have been easier to drift into despair, you chose to cling to the tiny spark that still remained inside your spirit. That flicker was your faith, and you protected it fiercely. Even when isolation tried to redefine your identity, you held on to what you knew of me deep in your heart. You questioned many things, but you never let go of the truth that I was still near. That single decision to not give in to the weight of what surrounded you began shifting things in the unseen realm. Your endurance in that unseen battle became a declaration that light still had authority over darkness in your life. I was there when you couldn't feel anything. I was close when you assumed you were forgotten. I was fighting on your behalf in ways that your eyes couldn't see. And though your arms felt weak and your soul tired, you never allowed that darkness to settle as your reality. You continued moving, even if your steps were small and slow. That movement was not ordinary, it was sacred. You didn't let your environment dictate your destiny. You allowed hope to remain, even when every voice inside told you it was safer to give up. And that made all the difference. You withstood the pressure of isolation, the piercing doubts, the fear of being unseen. You stood in the middle of that emotional storm and still lifted your eyes to me, not for answers, but simply for presence. And I was drawn to that. It was your unspoken courage that turned heaven's attention to your side. You could have become bitter. You could have abandoned everything. But instead, you allowed the darkness to deepen your hunger for light. That hunger became a magnet for transformation. Now, because you chose to believe in what you couldn't feel, you are emerging with a strength few possess. You have walked through shadows and come out bearing the glow of survival. You have scars that speak of faith, not defeat. And I take joy in the way you've allowed me to carry you when your strength was gone. The darkness didn't win, because I saw your fight. And now, the time has come for your horizon to shift. The season that tried to swallow you is ending. A brighter path awaits, not because of luck or chance, but because of the resilience you showed when the night was long. I am proud of how you endured. I am preparing the next steps to lead you out further into freedom. And as you move forward, remember your resistance to darkness was not in vain. It became the reason light now breaks through for you in ways it never has before. Even in your quietest moments, I heard you. You didn't shout. You didn't even speak out loud sometimes. But your spirit reached for me in such raw sincerity that I could feel it echo through eternity. Those small, trembling words spoken not with volume, but with vulnerability were never overlooked. You weren't praying for attention or recognition. You weren't rehearsing perfect sentences or trying to impress anyone. You were simply honest. Broken but honest. Tired but still turning to me. And that kind of prayer is the kind that reaches me faster than any sermon or song. You whispered when you could have stayed silent. You reached when you felt nothing responding back. You released your heart even though you didn't know what would come of it. And that moved me. Not because of the words themselves, but because of the posture of surrender that carried them. You didn't need a crowd, a building, or a microphone. You just needed me. And that is the most sacred kind of communion. Each time your lips formed even the simplest plea, something holy took place between us. In those moments, I leaned in. The world didn't stop to acknowledge your cry, but I did. I paused everything to respond in ways you might not have even noticed. Sometimes I sent peace. Other times, I strengthened you inwardly without explanation. And often, I answered not with immediate outcomes, but with supernatural endurance that you didn't realize was an answer in itself. You may not have seen dramatic changes right away, but every time you cried out from the depth of your soul, you changed the atmosphere around you. The connection between us became stronger. It was forged in private, built through trust, and anchored in dependence. You might have thought those moments were insignificant, but I want you to know they are preserved. None of those prayers disappeared. They didn't dissolve into the air. They reached me, and I'm holding them close. Many of them are seeds waiting for the appointed time to bloom. And when they do, you will see that what you once whispered in uncertainty has now become a harvest of goodness in your life. But even beyond the answers, I want you to know what truly matters. You turned to me when it would have been easier to disconnect. You came close to me without demand or expectation. You didn't treat me as a transaction. You treated me as your source, your friend, your father. That's why I draw near to you in ways others cannot comprehend. We built something sacred in those quiet exchanges, and now you are walking in the overflow of intimacy that no one can fake or fabricate. You've discovered the power of simply being real with me. Keep doing that. Keep praying not out of habit, but out of trust. Let every sigh, every tear, every quiet moment continue to be an offering. I am listening, always. You don't have to force words when your heart is already speaking. And know this. The prayers you thought were lost are actually leading you now. They are going before you, shaping doors, clearing paths, shifting circumstances that haven't reached your sight yet. You may not even remember them all, but I do. Every single one still breathes in my presence. That's how deeply you've touched me. I saw the moments when confusion tried to take over your thoughts, when the waiting felt like wandering, and every unanswered request seemed like a denial. You wondered what was happening behind the scenes, why doors didn't open when you were ready to walk through them, why answers seemed delayed when your heart had already surrendered. Still, you chose to believe in me even when my timing did not match your expectation. The choice holds more value than you realize. You weren't clinging to outcomes, you were holding on to me. You allowed me to be your anchor even when the waves didn't calm immediately. That kind of trust is not common. It's not birthed from comfort or clarity. It comes from deep, refined devotion, something that doesn't develop overnight but is forged in the fire of patience. You didn't let frustration take root. You didn't walk away in bitterness or turn to alternate paths just because mine seemed longer. You stayed. You waited. You wrestled through the not yet with the faith that I was still present, still working, even when nothing around you confirmed it. And I was working. Every delay had purpose. Every pause had protection woven into it. I wasn't withholding to harm you. I was aligning things perfectly. I was clearing out obstacles, preparing hearts, reshaping environments, and maturing blessings that weren't ready yet. I delayed what you asked for because I knew the right time would bring not just the answer, but the fulfillment of every detail you hadn't even considered. Your trust during those uncertain stretches became your offering, and I accepted it fully. It showed me that you weren't after just a result, you were after relationship. And because of that, your story is becoming one of uncommon stability. You won't be shaken when the next season shifts, because you've learned to walk with me without needing immediate proof. But maturity will open doors that others try to force open prematurely. Even now, there are things unfolding because of the trust you showed when nothing made sense. You passed through the season of unknowns and chose not to manipulate outcomes. That showed me your faith wasn't shallow. It was rooted. It was real. It was resilient. And now I am accelerating what was once paused, not because you demanded it, but because you remained faithful in the stillness. What comes next will not be a random breakthrough. It will be a divine unveiling of everything that was maturing in silence. You have learned to appreciate me for who I am, not just for what I can give. That's why I'm bringing you into a season where both identity and promise will be honored. What you trusted me with in the dark will be rewarded in the light. And when others ask how it happened, you will smile because you will know it was never about rushing. It was about trusting. You walked the slow path with grace, and now your harvest will be full and lasting. You proved that trust isn't about knowing everything, it's about knowing the one who does. There was a time when everything around you seemed to move in opposition. You faced circumstances that pressed on every side, situations that felt too heavy, moments that threatened to collapse the very ground beneath you. Yet in the middle of that pressure, you chose to remain steady. You didn't flinch. You didn't allow the current to sweep you away. You stood not out of arrogance, not from stubbornness, but from a quiet confidence that I would hold you upright. Even when you felt the weight of uncertainty trying to buckle your knees, you did not abandon your position. You didn't run. You didn't retreat. You remained. That act of stillness was not weakness, it was a testimony of spiritual strength. While others may have rushed into panic, you leaned into peace. You may not have realized it then, but every time you stayed grounded while the storm howled around you, you were declaring something powerful in the spiritual realm, that you trusted me more than the chaos. You didn't need a perfect environment to be planted. You didn't demand immediate change to keep your footing. Instead, you dug deeper. Your roots found me even when the winds were fierce. And because of that, I covered you. I shielded what you couldn't see. I preserved what you thought might break. The pressure wasn't meant to destroy you, it was allowed so you could discover that your foundation in me was stronger than any threat against you. While you stood still, I was working around you. The atmosphere you couldn't control, I was rearranging. The voices that tried to unbalance you, I silenced. The attacks that came to destabilize you were intercepted because you remained under the covering of stillness in my presence. It may have looked like you were doing nothing to the outside world, but to me, your stillness was obedience in its purest form. It was worship without noise. It was faith that didn't need to be flashy. It was surrender that whispered, "I will not be moved." I remember the precise moments when giving in looked easier, when your mind questioned the stand you were taking, when emotion screamed for movement, when fear suggested compromise. But you didn't give in to those demands. You stayed where I placed you, believing that I had not forgotten where you were. And that made all the difference. That posture has now become the reason you will be unshakable in seasons ahead. Because you learned how to remain when the wind blew, you will know how to advance when I command it. You've proven that your stability isn't tied to comfort or control, it's tied to trust. And now, the season is shifting. The pressure that once tried to collapse your spirit is loosening. The ground you stood on is being expanded. I'm widening your influence because you proved you wouldn't fall under pressure. You passed through the test of endurance, and now I can entrust you with more. What's coming won't shake you because what's behind you already tried and failed. The resistance was real, but your stance was stronger. You didn't win by force, you overcame through unwavering presence in me. That stillness has now become a sound in heaven, a sound that speaks of strength, resilience, and unwavering devotion. I am proud of the way you endured without shifting. And I want you to know this: every unseen battle you withstood will soon be followed by visible victories. Your stability created space for my movement. Your calm became the platform for my power. You didn't need to push, I'm the one who moves mountains. You simply needed to stand, and you did. And that is why I'm so happy with you. There came a time when you stood in front of something that appeared desirable, an opportunity, a relationship, a path that others would have taken without hesitation. It promised ease, comfort, validation, and even the illusion of success. Everything about it looked right on the surface. Others encouraged you to pursue it. It seemed tailored to your desires and timed perfectly to your waiting. And yet, somewhere deep within, you heard my voice whispering, "Not this." And you listened. You walked away from what seemed right because you wanted me more than the thing. That moment marked a turning point in our relationship. You gave up the visible to remain connected to the invisible. You let go of something that sparkled, not because it was bad, but because you discerned that it wasn't what I had chosen for you. A choice quiet, courageous, and costly didn't go unnoticed by me. It carved a deeper bond between us. You showed me that your love for me wasn't conditional upon benefits. You proved that your heart wasn't for sale. I saw what the decision cost you. I know the emotions you battled when you let it go. The doubts that tried to crawl in afterward. The empty space that remained where that thing once lived. And I also know that no one really understood your choice. Some questioned you. Some called it foolish. Some thought you were afraid to take a chance. But I knew the truth: you weren't afraid, you were faithful. You didn't let the shine blind you from the sacred. You didn't allow temporary appeal to pull you away from eternal purpose. That kind of loyalty is rare. When you chose me instead of that appealing alternative, you aligned yourself with something higher than convenience. You aligned with calling. You didn't see it at the time, but that decision protected your future. The path you turned away from would have led you into something far less than what I've prepared. It wasn't just about what looked good, it was about what was right for you. You were willing to lay something down without demanding an explanation, and that posture created room for greater things to unfold. That sacrifice, though unseen by many, released a ripple effect into your destiny. Because you obeyed in private, I am now setting things in motion that will bless you in public. You have shown me that you would rather walk in alignment with my plans than chase after quick gratification. That makes you trustworthy with more. The world celebrates those who take what they can, when they can. But you stepped away with quiet strength. You didn't need a crowd to validate your obedience. You just needed to know I was still leading you. And that's why I am bringing you into places where your obedience will speak louder than anything you could have held onto. I have prepared divine replacements not just equal, but exceeding in every area where you chose surrender over self. What you walked away from was not lost, it was traded. Traded for something holy. Traded for something eternal. Traded for something tailor-made for your calling and your timing. Your decision to let go out of love for me revealed the depth of your spiritual maturity. You trusted that what I had planned, even if unseen, was worth more than what was offered. That's the kind of trust that transforms lives. That's the kind of faith that changes legacies. And because you placed my will above your own desire, I will honor you. I will fill the empty space you created through surrender with joy, peace, and purpose. You may have walked away from what looked good, but you walked straight into the arms of everything I have designed specifically for you. And I'm so happy you did. I saw the moment when you had every reason to close your heart. You were hurt, and the pain wasn't vague, it was personal. Words were spoken that should never have been said. Actions were taken that bruised your spirit and left you with wounds that others didn't even acknowledge. And in the silence that followed, you waited. Not for revenge, not for an audience, but just for someone to say, I was wrong. That admission never came. The apology never arrived. But instead of hardening your soul or storing up bitterness, you made a quiet decision that changed everything. You chose to forgive. Not because it was easy, not because they deserved it, but because you knew I was watching. You extended grace into a place that only justice seemed to belong. You released the debt even though no one asked you to. And in that sacred act, you touched the very nature of my heart. Forgiveness in the absence of apology is one of the greatest displays of spiritual authority. It doesn't mean forgetting the offense or pretending it didn't cut deep. It means you placed the offense in my hands instead of locking it inside yours. You refused to carry the weight that wasn't yours to hold. And that freed not just the person who hurt you, it freed you. While the world measures strength by retaliation, I saw yours in the way you let go quietly. No announcement. No need for recognition. Just quiet release. That moment became a monument in heaven's records. It was written down. It mattered to me. When you chose to forgive without invitation, you became a vessel of healing. You said no to the cycle of pain and chose a different path, one that reflects the mercy you yourself have received. I know it didn't erase the memory. I know it didn't instantly fix what was broken. But it removed the poison. It stopped the infection of anger from spreading into your purpose. And that decision, made in private, created space in your heart for deeper peace to take root. You didn't do it for them. You did it for me. And that makes it holy. There is a power in forgiving that goes beyond what the eyes can see. It's a declaration that you are no longer defined by what others failed to do. It's a sign that you have chosen me over the need to be right. And now, because of that act, I am opening your heart to receive more of what I've longed to pour into you. You make room for joy, room for clarity, room for restoration that goes beyond relationships and touches every corner of your life. I want you to know that nothing about your choice to forgive was wasted. It didn't fall to the ground unnoticed. In fact, what you did in that moment placed you ahead spiritually in ways only I fully understand. It's part of why the next season of your life will feel lighter. You've dropped burdens that were never yours to carry. You've broken chains by doing what others couldn't. And now, what comes to you next will not have to push through the clutter of resentment. It will flow freely because your heart is clear. The apology may never come. The people who wounded you may never change. But your story has already shifted. Not because of what they did or didn't do, but because of what you chose in the face of silence. And that choice echoes louder in the spiritual realm than 1,000 words ever could. You forgave when no one said sorry, and that made heaven stand still. I honor you for that. And I will repay you with peace that surpasses understanding, joy that cannot be stolen, and healing that reaches deeper than the wound ever went. I'm so proud of you for that moment because it wasn't just a decision. It was a breakthrough. I remember every moment when you chose to give your time, your energy, your effort, not to be seen, not to be praised, but simply because you knew it was the right thing to do. There were no lights shining on your acts of kindness. No audience cheering as you stayed behind to help. No camera recording your quiet acts of compassion. But I saw it all. You gave when it cost you. You stayed when it was inconvenient. You carried burdens for others that no one else even noticed. And you did it without needing validation. That is what makes your service precious to me. When you gave freely, without expectation, you revealed the kind of love that reflects my heart. What you did in secret reached far beyond the moments you thought were small. They became eternal marks of obedience etched into heaven's record of your faithfulness. You could have waited until someone noticed. You could have withheld your help until it was acknowledged. What you didn't. You stepped in without hesitation. You lifted others up even when you felt weary yourself. You brought calm into rooms filled with stress. You answered calls for help that no one else responded to. And you did all of this without boasting, without demanding anything in return. That is what makes your offering beautiful. True service isn't measured by applause, it's measured by intention. And your intention has always been love. Not the kind that performs for attention, but the kind that moves quietly with purpose. That is the kind of love I walked in while I was among you. That is the love I recognize as my own. You may have wondered if it mattered. On the days when no one said thank you, when you were left unnoticed or misunderstood, you may have questioned whether it was worth it. Let me assure you it was. Every single act was counted. Every quiet sacrifice was gathered like treasure. I stored up the impact of your hidden service, and in time, I will reveal just how far it reached. People you helped are still carrying the peace you gave them. Lives you touched and shifted course because of what you planted. And even if they never speak your name again, I have written it down in places that will never fade. You weren't serving for titles or reward. You were doing it because love compelled you. That love became the fragrance of your life. Others may not have understood it, but they felt it. They felt safety when you walked into the room. They felt supported without knowing why. They felt my presence through you, even if they couldn't name it. That's what it means to be my vessel, to carry me without needing recognition. And you've done that so well. Now I want you to hear this clearly. The days of unseen labor are not forgotten. I will honor you not just spiritually, but tangibly. There are doors opening now that are connected to your hidden faithfulness. What you did for others in secret, I am about to reward openly. Not because you asked me to, but because your consistency has qualified you for more. You can trust me to lift what you laid down in humility. I will make sure that nothing you did out of love is wasted. It was never in vain. You sowed with sincerity, and now the harvest will come not in noise, but in fulfillment. So keep your heart open, because what I'm about to pour into your life is not random, it's personal. It's my way of saying, I saw you when no one else did. I saw your service, your sacrifice, your surrender. And I'm so happy with you. What comes next is built on what you offered when no one was watching. And that is a foundation I can build anything on. There were days when your love wasn't returned. You gave your best to people who didn't recognize its value. You showed kindness to those who remained distant. You offered grace in places that responded with coldness. Still, you chose to keep loving. Not because it was easy. Not because you always felt strong. But because something inside you, something rooted in me, refused to let bitterness win. You continued to extend compassion even when it wasn't acknowledged. You smiled when your heart was aching. You spoke gently when the words spoken to you were harsh. And that decision to keep loving when love was not reflected back became one of the most powerful acts of obedience in your journey. You weren't looking to earn affection. You weren't trying to gain approval. You simply knew that the love I placed in you wasn't meant to stop flowing, even in uncomfortable places. I saw you all. I saw the way you held back anger and chose patience. I saw the way you remained soft-hearted in situations that could have easily hardened you. I watched you resist the urge to shut down, even when disappointment wrapped itself tightly around your soul. You may have felt invisible in those moments. You may have wondered if continuing to love was even worth it. But I want you to know that every choice you made to love beyond emotion was counted. It reflected me more than you know. Because love is not about how it's received, it's about who you are becoming. And in those moments when you did feel loved, you became a living demonstration of the kind of love I gave to the world, selfless, unwavering, constant. Your consistency in love, especially when neglected, became a testimony in the spiritual realm. It became evidence that my character is alive in you. You were not loving for reciprocation, you were loving from a place of overflow. And that's why your heart stayed pure. That's why your mind remained clear. You weren't reacting to people, you were responding to my spirit. And that response became the reason darkness couldn't settle in your soul. Even when others withdrew, even when connections changed, even when silence replaced closeness, you didn't let pain alter your purpose. You chose to keep doing good. You chose to stay open. You chose to reflect what you carry, not what you receive. And now, I want you to understand something beautiful. What you poured out in those hidden places is returning to you, but not from the same people, not in the same form. I am sending love back to you in ways that will surprise your heart. New relationships, healing connections, peaceful environments. You will not remain in the cycle of unreciprocated love. Because you sowed purely, you will reap abundantly. Not as compensation, but as confirmation that I saw what no one else acknowledged. Your ability to love in lack prepared you to steward love in overflow. And more than anything, your heart has grown. You now carry a love that is unshaken by circumstances. You've cultivated a spirit that doesn't need external affection to remain kind. That is strength. That is maturity. That is beauty born in the presence of God. Others may never understand how you endured what you did without closing your heart. But I know how much it took. And I want you to know this too. You are about to be surrounded by what you once had to carry alone. The season of one-sided love is ending. The time of mutual honor is beginning. And it's not happening by accident, it's happening because you loved well when it was hardest. I am so pleased with you. And I'm not just saying it, I'm proving it. Get ready for love that lifts you, surrounds you, and reminds you that I never missed a single act of your faithfulness. I watched you when the pressure to move was overwhelming, when the noise around you said, hurry, and the world applauded speed over wisdom. People around you were running after opportunities, chasing timelines, grabbing hold of anything that promised quick fulfillment. But you, my faithful one, you waited. Not because you lacked options, not because you had nothing to pursue, but because you had the courage to be still until you were sure I was leading. That kind of restraint isn't born from passivity. It comes from deep conviction. It takes strength to remain when your surroundings shout that you're behind. It takes clarity to pause while others race past you, their footsteps loud, their voices certain, their direction seemingly clear. What you knew better. You knew that movement without me isn't progress, it's distraction. So you waited, not in fear, but in hope. I saw the days when doubt crept in, whispering that you had missed your moment. I felt the ache in your chest as others celebrated milestones you had prayed for. I heard the questions that rose in your heart. Did I wait too long? Should I have said yes earlier? Am I being foolish to still believe? Yet even with those questions circling, you didn't break your posture. You held your ground with grace. You placed your timeline in my hands and chose to believe that I was not late. That trust became a seed, planted deep in the soil of expectation. And though it felt buried, it was never forgotten. While you waited, I was working not just around you, but within you. I was shaping your discernment, refining your desires, preparing you to recognize what's truly from me when it arrives. Many thought they were moving ahead, but they were only moving fast. You, on the other hand, were being positioned. What looked like delay was actually design. You weren't stuck, you were set apart. And now, the things I've prepared for you are aligning in ways that would not have been possible had you rushed. You're going to step into moments that carry peace, not pressure. Clarity, not confusion. And you'll be able to walk confidently not because you took the first path, but because you waited for the right one. Waiting with hope is not about sitting idly. It's about choosing to trust even when there's no evidence yet. You didn't allow frustration to distort your faith. You didn't settle for the temporary to escape the tension. You stayed in that sacred middle space between desire and fulfillment, and you honored me in it. That middle place is where many give up, but you didn't. And because of that, I am about to do something in your life that others will marvel at. Not because of how quickly it happens, but because of how beautifully it fits. You see, what I'm bringing you into now wouldn't have made sense if it had come earlier. You needed time, space, and maturity to carry the weight of what's coming. And now, because you waited with expectancy, your spirit is aligned with my movement. There's no need to compare your journey with anyone else's. What I'm doing with you is entirely unique. I wasn't trying to delay you, I was preparing the perfect environment for what I knew you'd thrive in. You didn't miss anything. You're right on time. And you will walk into fulfillment not as someone who barely made it, but as one who trusted deeply and waited well. So don't look back in regret. Don't question the quiet seasons. They were necessary. They built a foundation that speed could never provide. And now, as the pieces come together, you'll realize that the waiting didn't just shape your story, it shaped you. And I'm so pleased with what I see in you now. You waited with hope. And because of that, what's ahead will be more than you asked, better than you imagined, and worth every moment you stood still. There were moments when everything around you invited frustration. Circumstances shifted unexpectedly, and it felt like what you were building began to fall apart. Disappointment whispered its lies, and your expectations were challenged again and again. You could have chosen to speak words filled with resentment. You could have allowed negativity to form a language of its own in your heart. But instead, you lifted your voice not in bitterness but in reverence. You turned your gaze away from what was going wrong and placed it fully on me. You worshipped not because life was easy, but because you knew I was still worthy. You sang through the struggle. You gave thanks in the absence of explanation. You chose to raise your heart in honor rather than let your lips echo complaint. That decision created a shift in the atmosphere around you. Heaven listened. The very posture of your praise and pressure became a melody that reached beyond the boundaries of your immediate reality. I saw the choice you made in private. You shut the door, knelt on tired knees, and gave me what was most precious, your trust in the form of gratitude. And that wasn't empty ritual. It wasn't performance. It was real. Your worship wasn't based on circumstance, it was born from connection. You declared with every word, I know who you are, even when I don't understand what you're doing. That is what pleased me. That is what captured my heart. You weren't worshiping to get something, you were worshiping because you knew I had already given you all you truly needed, my presence. You allowed reverence to rise from the middle of your ache. You taught your soul to bless me when it would have been easier to blame me. And because of that, something deeper grew in you. You learned that joy is not tied to results, it's anchored in revelation. You discovered that worship is a weapon, not a routine. It put back the heaviness. It guarded your mind when overthinking tried to take control. Your song became your shield. It became a fire in the darkness. And it didn't matter who was watching. Whether the room was empty or filled, your heart was already fixed. You offered what few do in hard times, adoration without condition. That kind of worship tears down walls. That kind of worship opens the heavens. That kind of worship is what I am drawn to. You need to know that your praise changed things. Not just around you but within you. What looked like surrender to others was actually strength. You weren't giving up, you were rising up in the most powerful way possible. By choosing worship, you disarm every plan of discouragement. You weaken the voice of fear. You confused the enemy. And in doing so, you came closer to me than ever before. I dwelled in those moments with you. I surrounded you, filled you, rested upon you. That's what you invited through your choice, not relief. but divine companionship. And now, because of your unwavering praise, there's an anointing increasing over your life. Doors are opening not because of effort, but because of alignment. I can trust you with more because I saw how you worshiped with less. I can release greater blessing, not just because you asked, but because you've proven that gratitude is your posture regardless of season. So don't stop now. Continue to lift your heart in worship, not just when things go well, but when nothing makes sense. That's what it means the most. That's when it shakes the very foundations of opposition. You've already begun something powerful, and I will complete what I started in you. I'm so pleased. I'm so moved. I'm so near. Keep worshiping, my child, because I'm about to do something in your life that only worship could have unlocked. I remember the moments when you looked at what was in your hands and knew it wasn't much, not in the eyes of the world, not by the standards of abundance, but you still gave. Not just from your finances, but from your time, your strength, your compassion. You extended yourself in ways that cost you something. You didn't wait until things were easy. You didn't give from excess, you gave from faith. You shared when you were weary. You showed up when you needed rest. You reached out when no one had reached for you. And though what you offered may have seemed small to others, to me, it was beautiful. It was pure. It was sacrifice offered with sincerity, and I received it with joy. You gave not because you were trying to earn anything, but because something inside you refused to let need pass by unacknowledged. You saw someone hurting, and instead of turning away, you stepped in. You noticed lack, and you responded not out of pressure, but from love. You didn't wait to be asked. You didn't hesitate to act. Even in your own limitations, you found a way to be a blessing. And I want you to know, I noticed. Every unseen moment, every silent offering, every time you handed over what you could have held for yourself, you were planting something eternal. There were times when giving left you vulnerable. You wondered if you had enough for yourself. You worried quietly if being generous would cost you stability. And still, you chose to trust. That trust, shown not just in thought but in action, became a testimony in the spiritual realm. You didn't give to impress. You didn't give to be praised. You gave because your heart was aligned with mine. And what you may not realize is that your giving opened more doors than any striving ever could. While others tried to achieve through effort, you unlocked favor through compassion. I multiplied your offering in ways you couldn't see. I took the small and made it sufficient. I stretched your capacity. I replenished what you thought was gone. You were pouring from a vessel that I was secretly refilling. And that's why you didn't run dry. That's why you made it through seasons that should have exhausted you. Your generosity didn't deplete you, it protected you. It became the reason certain needs were met before you even spoke them. Because what you sowed in quiet obedience returned to you in quiet provision. You must understand, it's not about the amount. It never was. It's about the heart. And yours, oh, my child, your heart has been a river of grace to those around you. Your giving wasn't a transaction. It was an act of trust. A living demonstration that your source is not your circumstances, it's me. And now, I am honoring that trust. I am increasing what you carry. Not just materially but spiritually. You will have more to pour because you gave when others withheld. You will have greater reach because you loved when it cost you something. And don't be surprised when opportunities come from unexpected places. Don't be alarmed when provision finds you instead of you having to chase it. That's what happens when you give out of faith. That's what follows those who sow into others from a place of love, not obligation. You have built a pattern in the Spirit, and it will not return void. The fruit of your sacrifice will be seen, and it will be sweet. You didn't give because you had to, you gave because you chose to. That choice reflected who you are and who you belong to. It echoed the very essence of my nature. And that's why I'm rejoicing over you right now. You gave what you didn't have to. And in doing so, you revealed something eternal. I see it. I treasure it. And I promise you this, Nothing you've poured out in obedience will ever go unnoticed in my kingdom. I'm so proud of you. There were stretches of time when direction felt blurred, when each step forward seemed to carry more questions than answers. You looked around for signs, for confirmation, for some form of clarity to anchor your next move, but the road ahead remained hidden in shadows. In those moments, uncertainty tried to shake your confidence, to make you doubt the journey we were walking together. And yet, you remained. You didn't abandon what I had whispered to your heart simply because the vision was no longer vivid. You didn't write the map just to feel in control. Instead, you chose to trust me when I gave you no timetable, no visible outcomes, no assurance of how long it would take. That's what moved me. You walked forward with nothing but my presence, and that was enough for you. You could have paused. You could have turned around. You could have demanded details before taking another step. But you didn't. You held tightly to what you knew of me, not what you saw in front of you. When the fog settled over your circumstances, you leaned into the sound of my voice. When others sped ahead chasing what made sense, you waited on what was sacred. That kind of loyalty cannot be taught. It is born out of deep intimacy. And you, my child, have proven again and again that your commitment is not contingent on convenience. You follow me even when the trail disappears beneath your feet. I saw how many days you continued to believe even when no breakthrough arrived. You weren't chasing answers, you were choosing alignment. That choice is rare in a world obsessed with outcomes. But your eyes were fixed on me, not just what I could give. And because of that, you've developed a level of spiritual maturity that few ever taste. You've learned to live not by sight but by faith, and that faith has created space for me to lead you deeper, to show you dimensions of my will that only trust can uncover. You didn't need clarity to be obedient. You didn't require constant reassurance to keep your feet moving. You followed me through territory that felt unfamiliar, holding on to promises that felt distant, leaning on a peace that surpassed understanding. That journey wasn't a test of information, it was a test of trust. And you passed it. Quietly, humbly, faithfully. You walked by light that was enough for only one step at a time, and you never tried to outrun my pace. That's what makes you ready for more. That's why what's ahead will be delivered with divine precision. Because you've learned that faithfulness isn't seasonal, it's a posture, a rhythm, a lifestyle. You didn't just believe for a moment, you kept believing long after others gave up. And now, I want you to know, the path that once seemed veiled is about to be revealed. Where once there was fog, there will be focus. Where once you wandered, you will now walk in purpose. I've watched your steady heart. I've recorded your consistent yes. And I am answering not just with direction, but with acceleration. Your faithfulness in what was hidden has positioned you for doors to open without resistance. Not because of how loudly you prayed, but because of how quietly you trusted. That is the kind of devotion I build my kingdom upon. So don't question the seasons that felt slow or silent. They were shaping you. They were training your spirit to hear me in the stillness. And now that you've learned to follow me without a map, I can entrust you with destinations beyond what you imagined. You stayed faithful when there was nothing to confirm your steps, and that, my beloved, is why I'm so happy with you. What's ahead will not just make sense, it will make history in your life. And it all started with that steady, unseen faith that never stopped walking, even when the road disappeared. There were moments when compromise presented itself in subtle forms. It didn't always come as something obviously harmful, it came clothed in promises of comfort, shortcuts, acceptance, or escape. You stood in front of opportunities that, though attractive on the surface, required the surrender of your convictions. And in those moments, I saw you pause. You evaluated not just what looked right, but what felt aligned with truth. You didn't act on impulse. You didn't let the pressure of others guide you. Instead, you guarded the very place where I dwell, your heart. You chose to close the door on what could have slowly unraveled your foundation. That quiet resistance echoed louder in heaven than any public display of strength. It would have been easier to let your guard down, to justify a small shift in values because of exhaustion or disappointment. The world around you certainly wouldn't have questioned it. But something within you, something born from your time with me, reminded you of who you are. You weren't just protecting a moment. You were protecting everything we've built together. You didn't let temporary satisfaction interfere with lasting purpose. And that kind of decision is what keeps you rooted when the winds of culture and emotion try to sway even the strongest. I know the struggle you endured when no one was watching. The internal battle between desire and discipline. The wrestling between just this once and what will this do to my soul. You didn't always feel strong, but you made the right decision anyway. That's what makes your victory even more powerful. You overcame not because you felt invincible, but because you depended on me more than your own strength. You allowed my voice to grow louder than the noise of compromise. And each time you said no to what would have dimmed your light, you made room for more of my presence to shine through you. You chose integrity even when it cost you connection. You walked away from things that seemed convenient but carried consequences. That's a level of spiritual awareness that few pursue. You didn't do it for applause. You didn't broadcast your resistance. You simply honored me when it would have been easier to blend in. And that kind of honoring does not go unnoticed. It builds endurance in you. It shapes discernment. It strengthens the parts of your character that I will use in greater places ahead. Your heart matters to me deeply. It's not just the center of your emotions, it's the core of your calling. When you chose to protect it, you were preserving the vessel I pour into. A guarded heart doesn't mean a closed one, it means a healthy one. And yours, though tested, remained open to me while resisting what tried to contaminate it. You've shown me that you value what we share more than fleeting gratification. And that's why you are safe in my hands. You're not easily swayed. You've chosen to stand firm when the easy route begged for your attention. And that strength will carry you forward into even more responsibility. Now, because of the boundaries you built in silence, I am establishing blessing in public. Your refusal to compromise has cleared the path for clarity. Your spiritual atmosphere is open, pure, and ready for divine instruction. Where others gave in and delayed their destiny, you resisted and accelerated yours. What's forming now in your life is the fruit of every unseen moment of self-control, every whispered no when temptation tried to steal something sacred. You said no to the wrong things so I could say yes to the right ones. I'm preparing to entrust you with more because you've proven you'll guard it. You've shown that your yes to me carries weight. And now, what flows into your life won't be delayed by distraction. You're free, and you're focused. And I'm proud of the way you've honored that focus. I rejoice in your discipline. I celebrate your purity of intention. And I want you to know, this kind of obedience builds legacy. Not just for you, but for those around you who are being changed by your example. You protected your heart. And because of that, I will protect your future. I watched you during the seasons when evidence was scarce, when circumstances screamed one thing, but your spirit clung to another. You stood in the gap between what was promised and what was present, and instead of surrendering to doubt, you leaned deeper into me. You didn't need proof to keep walking. You didn't demand signs before continuing to trust. You lived by something greater than sight. You lived by the substance of belief. That kind of faith moves mountains in realms you cannot yet perceive. That kind of faith sends waves through the unseen, shifting atmospheres long before results reach the surface. While others needed confirmation to feel secure, you chose to rest in my character. You decided that who I am was more trustworthy than what your eyes were reporting. You faced situations that didn't align with your prayers. There were delays, detours, and disruptions that made no sense. Still, you whispered yes. You stood tall even when the ground felt unstable beneath your feet. You said, I trust you. Not because everything was going well, but because your heart knew I was still in control. That's the kind of trust that captured heaven's attention. It doesn't require a blueprint or a visible outcome, it simply rests on relationship. And that's what we've built, you and I. Relationship strong enough to hold your hope when logic tries to erase it. You didn't deny the difficulty. You acknowledged the pain, the lack, the tension of waiting. But you never let those things redefine my nature to you. You held on to what you knew in your spirit, even when your senses told a different story. And that kind of faith is what I honor most. You believed not because you saw the end, but because you saw me. You walked forward even when the view was obstructed. You gave thanks even when the breakthrough hadn't come. You believed for more, not because it was guaranteed, but because you were grounded in my goodness. And I want you to know, every moment you chose trust over fear, every time you lifted your thoughts above the storm, and aligned them with my voice, it was counted. Not one moment of that spiritual defiance against despair was wasted. It built something inside you that cannot be stolen. Your faith has created a highway for my promises to reach you, unhindered by doubt. The very ground you refused to abandon is now becoming fertile soil for miracles to grow. You are about to see with your eyes what you carried in your heart for so long. Not because you forced it into being, but because you believed long enough to receive. Many around you may have questioned your confidence. They saw the chaos and wondered why you still had peace. They noticed the setbacks and couldn't understand your smile. But what they didn't know is that your joy wasn't rooted in results, it was rooted in revelation. You've learned that I never fail, even when the process looks nothing like what you imagined. You've understood that my delays are not my denials, and that understanding has become your foundation. It's the reason you haven't been shaken. It's the reason you're still standing. And now, I want you to get ready for something beautiful. The days ahead will reflect the faith you cultivated in the shadows. What you once believed without seeing, you will now see with clarity. What once required hope will now be wrapped in fulfillment. I'm not just answering your prayers, I'm exceeding them. Because you trusted me when there was nothing tangible to hold on to, I will now pour out blessings that go beyond what you dared to imagine. You believed in me more than what your eyes could see, and now your eyes will behold what your heart has already known to be true. I'm so proud of the way you waited, the way you hoped, and the way you trusted. And now, it's time to step into the reward of that unwavering faith. I was with you in those moments when falsehood tried to take root in the space around you. Accusations were whispered, assumptions were made, and words meant to distort your character moved like shadows behind closed doors. The weight of it was heavy, not just because it was in, but because of how deeply it cut. And yet, through all of it, you didn't let their voices become your truth. You didn't bow to the pressure to defend yourself in ways that would only stir more confusion. Instead, you remained grounded, not in pride but in quiet confidence. You knew who you were in me, and you refused to let deception redefine you. The attacks weren't just external. Some of the harshest lies came to your own thoughts. Voices tried to convince you that you weren't enough, that your journey was off course, that everything you had worked so hard to build was slipping through your hands. But instead of entertaining the spiral of doubt, you stood in stillness. You didn't react out of fear. You didn't collapse under the weight of what wasn't true. You returned to me. You let my words be louder than the accusations. You leaned into what I had already spoken over you and refused to exchange it for the noise of slander or the sting of rejection. That strength, internal, unwavering, and gentle, became your shield. Not everyone saw it. Not everyone understood why you remained composed when everything around you tried to provoke chaos. But I saw how you chose clarity over confusion. I watched how you prioritized peace over retaliation. I rejoiced as you let your integrity speak louder than your defense. The truth, my beloved, doesn't need to shout, it only needs to stand. And that's exactly what you did. You stood not to prove anything to man, but because you trusted me to be your defender. I want you to know that I've been dealing with everything said and done against you. Nothing escaped my notice. Nothing slid past my justice. While you stayed anchored in truth, I was working behind the scenes to dismantle every scheme and expose every intention. You didn't have to fight for your reputation, I've already secured your vindication. And what's coming next is not just restoration of what was questioned, it is the elevation of what I always saw in you. What others try to minimize, I am about to magnify. You will walk in a level of honor that no lie can diminish because you trusted my timing more than your need to be understood. I also want you to hear this clearly. Standing firm doesn't mean the words didn't hurt. I know they did. I felt your pain. I caught the tears you didn't let fall in front of others. But your ability to endure them without changing who you are, that is the fruit of maturity. That is the mark of a heart that belongs to me. And for that, I am so proud of you. You didn't let bitterness grow where offense tried to plant itself. You didn't become the words that came against you. You became proof that truth doesn't need to shout when it is rooted in love. And now, the season you're entering will reflect the quiet strength you've walked in. Where they tried to confuse your identity, I will now confirm your calling. Where they tried to stain your name, I will place favor upon it. What was meant to break your spirit will now build your testimony. You are not who they said you were, you are who I say you are. And I say you are faithful, pure, chosen, and deeply known. You've proven that you're not shaken by the empty noise of falsehood. And because of that, I am releasing clarity, honor, and blessing in your direction. Not as a reward for perfection, but as a response to your endurance. You didn't crumble, you stood. And that's why I'm so happy with you. Keep standing. The truth is already working on your behalf. There were times when pain knocked at the door of your soul and disappointment tried to settle inside. You had every reason to allow resentment to take root. Moments when people let you down, when outcomes didn't match your faithfulness, when your efforts went unnoticed or unappreciated. The sting of injustice tried to persuade you to hold on to the ache, to keep replaying the offense, to build walls that no one could enter again. But you did let it happen. You could feel the temptation to grow hard, to shut down, to carry silent anger as a shield, but instead, you made a sacred choice. You chose not to let what happened to you become who you were. You made space for healing instead of hatred. I saw how quiet that decision was. There were no announcements, no visible proof of the inner work that was happening. But I was there, watching as you surrendered each painful memory, each hurtful moment, back into my hands. You whispered forgiveness not because it felt easy, but because you refused to poison your future with unhealed wounds. You let me tend to the damage, and you stayed open when you could have become guarded. That openness wasn't weakness, it was evidence of spiritual maturity. You gave me access to places most people keep locked up. You allowed my love to soften what life tried to harden. And because you refused to let bitterness stay, something beautiful began to grow in its place. Compassion. Depth. Wisdom. You began to feel deeper, see clearer, and carry peace that others could sense without explanation. What once tried to shut your heart down actually expanded your capacity to love. I used the very situations that threatened to break you to build something sacred within you. Your refusal to let the past define you has now become a gateway into the life I've designed for you, a life not bound by betrayal, but elevated by grace. I also know that your decision didn't come without a cost. You wrestled with the feelings. You had to relive the moments in order to release them. And sometimes, the choice not to be bitter made you feel exposed, vulnerable, even foolish in the eyes of others. But you kept choosing freedom over control. You didn't let the offense shape your responses. You didn't repeat the pain onto others. You became a safe place, not just for me to dwell, but for others to encounter a love that surpasses explanation. That's the fruit of your surrender, and I honor it deeply. What others thought would break you has become the reason your spirit now carries strength that can't be shaken. What was meant to linger like a shadow has been replaced by light so pure, it causes healing just by being present. You've become a living reflection of redemption, not because your life has been without pain, but because you chose to rise above it. You've learned how to walk through valleys without carrying the dust with you. And now, as you continue to move forward, the space in your heart that once felt heavy is now being filled with peace, joy, and clarity. This is the beginning of something new. Your future is not chained to the hands that once hurt you. The memories are no longer anchors, they're testimonies. And I will use them not to remind you of pain, but to reveal the power of transformation. What you overcame is not forgotten. It's part of the story I will now tell through you. Others will come to you, drawn not by perfection, but by the purity you preserved in the midst of trial. And when they ask how you kept going, how you remain soft in a world that encourages hardness, you'll simply smile and point to me. You refused to let bitterness live in you. And because of that, I will fill you with everything bitterness would have stolen: hope, laughter, healing, and new beginnings. You made room for me, even in the places that hurt most. And for that, I'm not only pleased, I'm rejoicing. I'm with you. I'm within you. And I'm so happy with the heart you've chosen to keep open. There came a time when people you trusted began to drift. Some left without a reason, others with explanations that didn't make sense. Some didn't say anything at all, they simply grew distant, slowly fading out of the spaces they once filled in your life. And yet, even as they turned away, even as familiar voices grew quiet and familiar faces became memories, you remained faithful. You didn't let their absence push you away from me. You didn't allow their departure to cause your devotion to falter. You stayed. You stayed in prayer. You stayed in worship. You stayed in love. You stayed in your calling. You didn't follow the crowd, you followed my heart. I know how hard that season was. I saw how deeply it wounded you to be left behind. I saw how much it cost you to keep showing up when the room felt emptier, when support grew thinner, and when encouragement was scarce. But you kept going. You kept believing. You continued to build what I placed in your hands even when it felt like you were doing it alone. That perseverance didn't go unnoticed. While others looked for comfort, you chose commitment. While others followed convenience, you chose conviction. And that made all the difference. You were tempted to retreat. You were tempted to give into the loneliness and let your heart close itself off. But instead of withdrawing, you leaned in. You leaned into my presence when people were no longer present. You leaned into my promises when affirmation from others went silent. You leaned into my love when relationships grew cold. And that leaning became your strength. It built something within you that only isolation could have formed, a depth that can't be shaken by the opinions or movements of people. You discovered what many never do, that intimacy with me is often deepened in seasons of abandonment. You chose me over the approval of man. You didn't let rejection turn into resentment. You didn't let absence become an excuse to run. You stayed. And because you stayed, your roots have grown stronger. Because you stayed, your spiritual ears have grown sharper. Because you stayed, your heart has become a resting place for my presence in ways few ever experience. You didn't need company to remain committed. You needed conviction, and you never lost it. And now, what you once endured in silence is about to give birth to something sacred. I'm surrounding you with new people, those who will walk beside you not out of obligation, but out of genuine unity. You're entering a season where the loyalty you gave will be returned, not through those who left, but through those I have prepared for your next chapter. I am replacing loss with divine connection. I'm not just restoring what was broken, I'm rebuilding something better, something lasting, something rooted in the same faithfulness you've shown me. You stayed through the heartbreak. You stayed through the quiet. You stayed through the misunderstanding. And I want you to know, I never left. Every tear that fell when you wondered if you were forgotten, I caught it. Every breath you took when it would have been easier to stop trying, I strengthened it. You've shown me that your relationship with me isn't dependent on who stays around you. And now, I can trust you with more because you weren't anchored in popularity, you were anchored in purpose. So don't look back in sorrow. Don't waste your energy trying to understand why others chose to leave. Their departure was not a reflection of your worth, it was a part of the process. And though it hurt, it created room. Room for growth. Room for new voices. Room for deeper revelation. You're not empty, you're ready. And I am filling what was empty with joy, peace, connection, and vision. You stayed, and because of that, I will pour out blessings that are drawn not to the crowd, but to the one who remained faithful. You stayed, and I'm so happy with you. When the pain was still fresh and the memories hadn't yet softened, you made a choice that shifted the atmosphere not around you, but within you. You could have responded with anger. You could have asked for judgment. You could have rehearsed their offenses and held tightly to the hurt. But instead, you brought them to me not in bitterness, but in prayer. You chose to speak their names not with hatred, but with hope. That kind of love that comes from the flesh. That kind of mercy is born only from deep union with my heart. And I want you to know those prayers were not forgotten. They rose like incense and carried a fragrance only found in the language of forgiveness. I watched you as you struggled with the decision. I saw the battle between wanting justice and choosing mercy. You didn't pretend it didn't hurt. You didn't deny the betrayal. You acknowledged the wound, but refused to let it control your spirit. Instead of asking me to repay them, you asked me to heal them. You laid down your right to see them hurt the way they hurt you, and in doing so, you picked up something far greater, a love that mirrors my own. You joined me in intercession, even for those who had no idea you were lifting them up. You may not realize it, but those prayers carried more power than 1,000 retaliations. They were weak, they were moving. Every time you said, "Bless them," when your emotions said otherwise, you waged war against bitterness. You chose to become a bridge instead of a barrier. You stepped into the realm of grace, not just receiving it for yourself, but extending it where it had not been earned. That makes you a peacemaker, and I call peacemakers my children not because they avoid conflict, but because they rise above it. Your decision to pray for those who wounded you didn't excuse what happened. It didn't erase the wrong, but it placed the situation into my hands rather than letting it poison your heart. You showed me that your spirit was more concerned with freedom than fairness. And now, I am responding to that heart posture with favor. The forgiveness you released is opening doors in your own life that anger would have kept shut. You see, when you release someone in prayer, you're not just setting them free, you're liberating your own soul. And that freedom is making room for the peace you've longed for. I also want you to understand the impact of what you did spiritually. Some of the people you prayed for have no idea how close they came to destruction. But your intercession slowed the enemy's plan. Your compassion interrupted a cycle. Because while you were hurting, you still let me love them through you. That is the very definition of Christ-like character. That is what makes heaven rejoice. You didn't just carry a cross, you chose to walk in resurrection power by choosing love over revenge. You might never hear them say thank you. You might never see the change you hoped for in them. But I have recorded every word, every moment, every tear-soaked whisper of mercy. And I will honor you, not just in private, but openly. The harvest of your prayers is coming not just for them, but for you. Healing in your body, peace in your thoughts, strength in your spirit, all because you chose to lift up what tried to bring you down. This is who you are. Someone who doesn't just survive hurt but transforms it. Someone who lets pain become purpose. Someone who reflects my nature in the face of adversity. And that's why I'm so happy with you. You didn't wait until you felt better, you chose love in the middle of the ache. And that kind of love will always carry power. I am with you, and I'm pouring blessing upon blessing over your life, because what you did may have been quiet, but it shook heaven. I watched you during the seasons when your soul was carrying more than words could ever express. You woke up each day with heaviness quietly pressing on your chest, emotions unspoken, and battles hidden behind a brave face. And still, even in those moments, especially in those moments you gave of yourself, you saw pain in others and moved toward them with compassion. You noticed burdens they carried and reached to help, all while yours remained unseen. That act of love, in the middle of your own heartache, reflected something sacred. You didn't wait until you were fully restored to be a source of strength. You didn't hide behind your struggle, you transformed it into service. That is divine. You had every reason to withdraw, to focus on your healing alone, to shut down and preserve what little energy remained. But instead of retreating, you stepped in. You chose presence over self-protection. You smiled through tears. You spoke life while wrestling with silence. You gave comfort even while you longed to be comforted. And I want you to know I saw it all. I measured every effort. I recorded every moment when you chose to uplift another's soul, not from a place of abundance, but from a place of devotion. The world may never fully understand what it took for you to continue showing up. It may never realize how your encouragement to someone else was the very thing you needed yourself. But I know. I saw how you silenced your own fears long enough to listen to someone else's. I watched you push past emotional fatigue to be present for those who couldn't stand on their own. And in those quiet sacrifices, you displayed the heart of a servant, a heart that mirrors mine. You weren't pretending to be strong. You weren't faking joy. What you were doing was greater. You were choosing love. You were saying, even in my pain, I will not stop being lie. That is courage. That is humility. That is kingdom greatness. You allowed your suffering to become soil for someone else's hope. And that, my child, is a testimony that echoes louder than any platform ever could. You ministered through your pain, and in doing so, you became a well of refreshment to others. And I want you to hear this clearly, because you gave out of brokenness. I am pouring restoration into you. I am not just patching what cracked, I am rebuilding you in fullness. I am sending healing, not only to the areas where you were wounded, but to the places you gave from when they were empty. You will feel joy return where weariness had made its home. You will feel lightness in the very places that once felt burdened. This is not a reward for performance, it is my response to your surrendered heart. I am surrounding you now with peace that will nourish what has been strained. The same way you lifted others, I will now lift you. You will not remain in a cycle of pouring without being poured into. You will see kindness return to you in unexpected ways. You will witness help come to you before you even have to ask. Because I do not overlook those who serve in silence. I do not forget the ones who pour when no one is looking. I honor those who choose compassion even while bleeding. You didn't wait for your story to be perfect before you became a vessel. You allowed your wounds to remain open enough to let me work through them. And now I will close those wounds not with scars of defeat, but with marks of purpose. Your story has become an offering. Your heart, even in its weariness, has produced fruit that I am proud of. And I want you to know this. Everything you gave while breaking is returning to you in the form of beauty, clarity, and strength. I am restoring you not only because you need it, but because you kept giving what you didn't always receive. You became an example of grace in motion. And that's why I'm smiling over you right now. You lifted others when no one lifted you. And now I will lift you higher than you've ever been. You are my delight, and I am so happy with you. There were moments when the pressure surrounding you felt unbearable, when every direction seemed blocked, and all progress appeared invisible. The voices of fear grew louder, circumstances stacked themselves against your hope, and even your own thoughts questioned how much longer you could hold on. And yet you stayed. You didn't throw away the purpose I planted within you. You didn't walk away from the calling that once ignited your soul. You didn't throw in the towel, even when everything in you felt tired. That quiet refusal to give up was a declaration of faith louder than a shout. It told heaven and hell alike that your trust wasn't built on feelings, it was rooted in truth. I know how close you came to quitting. Not because you were weak, but because the battle was so intense. You poured your energy into places that didn't yield instant fruit. You stood firm while the winds of discouragement pressed against your mind. You faced waves of confusion, unanswered questions, and doors that didn't open. But even in the silence, even when the outcome was delayed, you chose to remain. You clung to the promise when the process became overwhelming. That kind of perseverance is more powerful than you understand. It shakes the foundations of every lie that says you're alone or forgotten. You weren't just enduring, you were growing. Your endurance was being refined in a furnace most people avoid. You learned how to breathe when everything felt tight. You learned how to press forward without clarity. You discovered the strength of a soul that holds on to me with trembling hands. And now, that strength is becoming part of who you are. You didn't give up, and because of that, you've become unshakable. The enemy tried to drain your hope. You whispered lies like, "This isn't worth it," or "You're wasting your time." He tried to make you think that surrendering the dream would bring peace. But deep down, something kept you anchored. That something was me. I kept whispering reminders into your weary spirit, small glimpses of light that kept you moving. I was there, walking beside you in every step, holding you up when you thought you were crawling, reminding your soul that endurance would be worth more than you could imagine. You may not have realized it then, but your decision to keep going has set a new direction in motion. The road that once felt endless is beginning to unfold into open space. Where there was resistance, there is now release. Where there was delay, there is divine timing unfolding. I'm turning your quiet perseverance into public testimony. The same areas where you once felt stuck will become places of breakthrough. Not because you forced anything to happen, but because you refused to walk away. I'm also sending people into your life now, those who have been through the same depths and know what it means to endure. You will not be alone in this next chapter. You will be surrounded by strength, the same kind you developed in secret. And together, you will move forward into all I've prepared. Your story will become fuel for others who are tempted to stop short. They will look at you and say, "If they didn't quit, neither will I." That's the kind of legacy you are building. I know you didn't keep going for applause. You did it because your heart wouldn't let go of what I spoke. And that, my child, is why I'm so happy with you. I watched you stand when quitting would have been easier. I heard your silent prayers that asked for strength just to make it one more day. I honored every choice you made to rise again. And now, I'm opening the way forward, not just with blessing, but with purpose, clarity, and joy. You didn't give up. And now, it's time to step into everything that waited for your faithfulness to finish the test. It's coming because you stayed. There was a time when you reached for what you thought would satisfy the ache inside. You explored possibilities that glittered with promise. You gave your heart permission to wonder if something out there could ease the emptiness or mend the places within that felt fractured. The world extended its invitations, distractions dressed as comfort, illusions masked as freedom, voices that claimed they could offer what your spirit truly needed. You tried. You searched. You lingered in places that felt easier than facing what was actually stirring inside. But something within you, something deeper than your disappointment, reminded you of me. And even when nothing around you made that return easy, you came back. You didn't return with polished words or perfect understanding. You didn't try to impress me with a performance. You simply turned your heart in my direction. And that one pivot changed everything. You didn't need to explain, I already knew. You didn't need to earn your way back, I had been waiting. My arms never closed. My eyes never turned away. I followed you through every detour, not to shame you but to protect you. And when you finally turned around, I didn't ask where you had been, I celebrated that you came home. What you may not have realized is how powerful your return truly was. Many never make it back. Many grow too used to the temporary highs and forget the depth of peace they once knew in me. But you remembered. Somewhere in the noise, you heard my whisper. Somewhere in the confusion, you felt the tug on your soul. And you responded. Not because everything around you fell into place, but because you knew that nothing could replace what we had. That kind of return doesn't come from guilt, it comes from awakening. You remembered where rest truly lives, and that remembrance pulled you back to my heart. And I want you to know nothing was lost in the time you spent away. I preserved what mattered. I restored what looked damaged. I redeemed what others thought couldn't be recovered. Because when you come back to me, I don't start over, I continue. I build on your surrender. I strengthen what remained. I don't hold your journey against you. I use it to shape you. And now, you are walking in a new depth of grace, not because you were flawless, but because you were honest. You return not out of fear but out of love. And that is the kind of love that transforms everything it touches. The world offered many things, but it couldn't touch the ache only I was meant to heal. And now that you've tasted that again, you're walking differently. Your priorities have shifted. Your eyes see with greater clarity. You no longer run after what's flashy, you seek what's holy. You've let go of shallow desires in exchange for deeper fulfillment. And because of that, I am leading you into new things. Not just recovery, but renewal. Not just repair, but redirection. This time, you won't lose yourself in the noise. This time, you'll remain grounded in what truly matters. And don't let shame try to creep in. Don't let the memory of detours distract you from where you are now. You are not your past decisions, you are my present delight. Your return brought joy to heaven. Your decision to come back released a new chapter, one that will be marked not by regret, but by redemption. I will use your story to help others find their way. They'll see your courage. They'll hear your testimony. They'll follow your light back to the place they were always meant to be. So walk forward, my child. Not timidly, but with confidence. You came back not because you failed, but because you remembered where you belong. You belong with me. And now, we move forward together. No shadow from the past can linger where my light has entered. You're home. You're safe. And I'm so happy you returned. There came a moment when I whispered something difficult into your heart. It wasn't loud. It wasn't forced. It was gentle but unmistakable. I asked you to release something that mattered to you, something you held close, something that had become deeply woven into your dreams. And you wrestled. Not because you didn't love me, but because you felt so much for what I was asking you to leave behind. You replayed memories. You questioned the timing. You wondered whether it was truly my voice or your own fear. And even through the tension, you didn't turn away. You kept bringing it to me. You kept asking. You kept listening. And eventually, you did the bravest thing of all, you opened your hands. I saw the cost of that decision. I saw the way your heart trembled as you laid it down. You didn't understand why it had to be this way. You didn't have the answers you longed for. But you gave it to me anyway. Not because it made sense, but because you trusted me more than your understanding. That moment changed everything. It wasn't the loss that marked you, it was your obedience. You didn't just give up something you liked. You surrendered something you loved. And that level of surrender doesn't go unnoticed in heaven. You didn't know what would follow. There was no immediate replacement. No instant confirmation. Just quiet, sacred release. You could have held on. You could have delayed. But instead, you chose surrender over certainty. And that surrender became worship. You showed me that my will mattered more than your comfort. That my timing mattered more than your plans. You honored me not just with your words, but with your willingness to trust me with your most vulnerable places. That's the kind of love that cannot be shaken. You may not realize it, but that act of obedience opened a spiritual door that could not have been opened any other way. What you let go of didn't fall into the void, it fell into my hands. And now, I am working through that sacrifice in ways far beyond what you can see. You didn't just lose something, you planted it. And what grows from it will be greater than what you released. Because when you give me what matters most, I don't just return it, I redeem it. I know the quiet ache that has followed you since. The moments you miss it. The silent longing that rises when no one's watching. But I want you to know, I'm closer to you in those moments than ever. I'm not asking you to pretend it didn't hurt. I'm asking you to trust that your yes meant more than you'll ever know. Your willingness to let go didn't weaken you, it revealed a strength few possess. The kind of strength that lets me shape your story with clean hands and an open heart. You haven't seen the end of this chapter yet. You've only just begun to walk into what I've been preparing for you. And it's coming not as a replacement, but as a fulfillment. Something better. Something more whole. Something that doesn't just meet your needs, but reflects the faith you showed when you had nothing to cling to but me. This next season will not be built on comfort, but on covenant. And because you laid it down when I asked, You will walk forward with authority, peace, and the knowledge that your heart truly belongs to me. You showed me that you'd rather lose something important than lose alignment with my voice. And that makes you trustworthy. That makes you ready for more. Not just more responsibility, but more intimacy. More vision. More clarity. I'm not just pleased, I'm moved. Because what you did in private has shifted things in the spirit. You let go when you did have to. And now, I am bringing to you what only surrender could unlock. So walk forward with assurance, not with regret. What you released has not left your life, it's just being transformed. You're not empty. You're being prepared. And I'm so happy with you for trusting me enough to let go. When the path ahead was still foggy, when the outcomes were uncertain and your plans had not yet formed into clarity, you chose to trust me anyway. You stood at the edge of decisions that would shape the rest of your life, and instead of demanding a map, you gave me your hand. You didn't know where I would take you. You didn't know how long the journey would be. You weren't given every answer or every assurance. But what you gave me was even more valuable than understanding. You gave me your trust. A choice, quiet and courageous, created a shift in your entire future. I know it wasn't easy. I saw the questions you wrestled with, the dreams you held gently, unsure whether to pursue them or lay them down. The uncertainty tried to press in, and the voices around you offered plenty of advice, much of it rooted in fear. But you kept coming back to me. You chose prayer over panic. You asked me what I wanted instead of assuming you knew best. You were willing to take a different route, to pause when others were racing forward, to surrender your timeline to my purpose. And because of that surrender, your life has been aligned with divine timing. You didn't wait for a perfect scenario. You didn't wait for everything to fall into place. You said yes while things were still messy. You trusted me while doors were still closed. You moved forward even when you couldn't see how it would work. And that movement was not wasted. Every step you took in faith was recorded. Every time you released your control and whispered, "Your will, not mine," I drew nearer to you. Those words, spoken not in comfort but in complete vulnerability, touched my heart deeply. By placing your future in my hands, you unlocked something many never find: freedom. Freedom from needing to know everything. Freedom from the pressure of building your own legacy. Freedom from the weight of having to figure it all out. Your life is no longer built on self-dependence, it is built on divine dependence. And that foundation cannot be shaken. That's why I've been able to lead you, even when the journey has seemed unconventional. That's why doors opened that you didn't knock on. That's why you were protected from paths that would have drained your spirit. Because I had your future, and you gave me permission to guide it. And now, the season you're stepping into carries a peace that only surrendered hearts understand. You're no longer running after answers, you're walking with the answer. You're no longer driven by the need to prove yourself, you're grounded in the knowledge that I'm already pleased with your obedience. What's ahead of you is not random, it's the fruit of every moment you yielded your way to mine. And because you were willing to trust without full visibility, I'm about to reveal things to you that others never see, not because they weren't available, but because they were never surrendered. I'm also going to bring clarity to areas that once felt confusing. You won't have to force opportunities or chase confirmation. The alignment you're about to witness will come from the choices you made in secret, the prayers you prayed in quiet, the steps you took when no one else was walking with you. You allowed me to be the keeper of your destiny, and now I will make the path clear, the provision steady, and the outcome more beautiful than anything you could have designed yourself. What you placed in my hands is safe. The future you gave out control of is flourishing in my care. And I promise you this, what I am preparing for you is not delayed, it's developing. And when it's ready, it will fit you perfectly, because you didn't rush ahead of me. You waited. You believed. You followed. And that's why what's coming next will not only bless you, it will also reveal to the world what it looks like when a child of mine says, yes, before they see the whole picture. You gave me your future, and now I'm giving you a fulfillment that only surrender can produce. I'm so happy you trusted me. There were countless moments when you were surrounded by compromise, when the standards around you began to shift and the line between right and almost right started to blur. Voices around you said, "Everyone's doing it," and you felt the pressure to bend, to ease up, to relax the convictions you've carried deep within. What you didn't. You stood firm. Not out of fear, not out of legalism, but out of love. Out of a sincere desire to honor me with your body, your thoughts, your eyes, your words, your choices. And that desire, my beloved, was not only rare, it was powerful. I saw the way you chose to walk away when you could have stayed. I saw you close doors that others were rushing through. I saw you choose silence instead of joining conversations that would corrupt your peace. I watched you take the longer road, the harder one, the lonelier one, just to preserve what was sacred inside of you. And even when no one affirmed your efforts, even when others misunderstood your motives, you kept going. You weren't doing it for attention. You weren't trying to appear better than anyone. You were simply choosing me again and again when no one else was looking. The world offered alternatives. It tried to package brokenness in beauty. It offered shortcuts, fake intimacy, temporary satisfaction, and artificial identity. But you knew the difference. You felt the weight of choices long before they were made. And you made your decisions not out of impulse but out of reverence. That kind of purity, the kind that no one can see but me, builds something eternal. It shapes your soul in a way that can't be undone by the shifting values of the culture. You protected your light in the midst of darkness. And now that light is growing brighter, purity isn't just about what you said no to, it's about what you said yes to. You said yes to holiness. You said yes to peace. You said yes to a life that echoes with clarity, not confusion. You built a sanctuary within when the world encouraged chaos. You cultivated a heart that I could fully inhabit. And because of that, your purity has created a pathway for divine favor to flow in your life. Not because you're perfect, but because you're surrendered. Your choices have preserved you. They've protected doors that I intend to open. They've positioned you for connections that aren't tainted by ulterior motives. You don't have to second-guess my blessings because they're built on the solid foundation of obedience. You can walk confidently, knowing you didn't cut corners to get here. You can hold your head high, not in pride, but in peace. Because what you've carried in secret is now becoming visible. Your life is speaking a message louder than words could ever preach. It's possible to walk in truth when everything around you is built on compromise. And now, I'm going to honor the space you've made in your life for me. The boundaries you've drawn are about to become gateways for blessing. The things you've protected are now becoming the places where my presence will pour out most powerfully. You're going to see the fruit of what you've preserved. I will surround you with people who value the depth of your commitment. I will line you with those who walk in the same purity. I will cover you in favor that sets you apart, not for attention, but for assignment. You didn't stay pure just to check a box. You did it because your love for me was greater than the lure of the world. You proved that your heart belongs to heaven. And now, all of heaven celebrates you. You resisted what others embraced. You stood still when everything said, move with the crowd. And because of that, I'm establishing you in something rare, something lasting, something holy. I'm so pleased with you. You've remained faithful to your values. You've honored me with your lifestyle. And what's ahead will reflect the purity you've protected. Your hands are clean. Your heart is open. And I trust you with more than ever before. I remember the moment you brought me that request, the one wrapped in hope, layered with dreams, soaked in prayers you whispered over and over again. You longed for it, planned around it, imagined how life might look if it came to pass. And when you placed it before me, you weren't being selfish. You were being sincere. You weren't chasing fantasy, you were asking from a place of deep desire. And I listened. I held every word with care. But then, I answered with a silence that turned into redirection. I closed the door. I said no. And I know what that did to your heart. You didn't throw a tantrum. You didn't run. You didn't accuse me of withholding goodness. You simply paused, your spirit aching but your trust still intact. That moment meant more to me than you'll ever know. Because it wasn't just obedience, it was surrender. You didn't receive the outcome you wanted, but you still remained in me. You didn't understand my reasoning, but you didn't let confusion dissolve your faith. A kind of trust is rare. It's not formed when prayers are answered, it's revealed when they aren't. You weren't what you had over. Your longing was valid. But I saw what you couldn't. I saw the paths it would have taken you down. I saw the weight it would have added to your spirit. I saw the things that would have changed in ways that would have shifted you away from peace. So I stepped in, not to punish but to protect. Not to disappoint you, but to preserve what's sacred between us. I knew that saying yes would bring temporary satisfaction, but long-term sorrow. And I love you too much to bless you with something that would have slowly taken you from the center of my will. What moved me most was your response. You didn't try to force what I had closed. You didn't manipulate your way around my answer. You simply let me be God in the middle of your pain. You kept walking, not because it didn't hurt, but because you believed I was still leading you somewhere worth going. That quiet faith, that tearful surrender, that choice to hold on to me when nothing made sense, that's what caused heaven to lean in. You must understand, every time you trust me without explanation, you're building something unshakable in your spirit. You're preparing the ground for blessings that don't have strings attached. You're creating space for the kind of fulfillment that doesn't come from getting what you asked for, but from receiving what I've prepared specifically for you. What you let go of will never outweigh what I'm bringing. I know it was not rejection, it was redirection. And now I'm leading you into something you didn't even know you needed. You've proven that your devotion isn't based on me giving you everything you asked for. It's rooted in me being everything you need. And because of that, I'm about to release things into your life that were hidden behind that no. Relationships that bring healing. Assignments that carry joy. Miracles you didn't request because you couldn't have imagined them. It's coming not because you insisted but because you trusted. I honor the tears you cried behind that closed door. I honor the strength it took to smile when your hope felt crushed. I honor the nights you laid your head down and whispered, "I still believe you're good," even as your heart broke open. That belief held in the middle of broken expectations is what makes your faith so beautiful. It's why I'm releasing a new chapter now, one that will not repeat the pain but redeem it. And I want you to know this: you didn't lose. You didn't miss out. You didn't fail. You simply made room for something better. I said no not to your worth, but to the thing that couldn't carry it. And now, I'm saying yes to you in ways that will make sense in time. Hold on. What's ahead will prove that my no was never the end. It was a beginning of something far greater than what you thought you needed. I'm so happy with the way you trusted me even through tears. And I'm still writing your story with wisdom, with purpose, and always with love. I saw the moments when retaliation seemed justified, when the sting of betrayal throbbed freshly in your chest, and your mind replayed the wrongs done to you like scenes in a story that refused to end. You were hurt, not just by what was said, but by the silence that followed. You were wounded, not just by action, but by absence, by the people who should have protected your heart but chose to ignore it. And you had every reason to respond in kind. You could have matched the energy that was given to you. You could have exposed, shouted back, defended your name with the same force with which it was torn down. What you didn't. Instead, you made a higher choice, a choice that very few make. You decided to carry peace. You allowed me to sit with you in the ache rather than letting anger become your counselor. You invited my presence into the places where bitterness tried to bloom. And instead of building a case against those who wronged you, you chose to build a wall of protection around your peace. That act of restraint was not weakness, it was strength under control. It revealed that you trusted me to handle what you could have tried to settle yourself. You weren't seeking revenge. You were seeking restoration for your own heart and for your connection with me. Peace is not passive, it is powerful. And in choosing it, You disarmed every weapon the enemy hoped would be formed through your pain. You silenced the echo of offense and decided that your spirit would not be a battlefield. You made the brave decision to live unoffended, even when it hurt, even when you had to keep forgiving without ever hearing an apology, even when people misunderstood your silence and assumed it was weakness. You stood still, clothed in humility, holding space for me to be your defender. And I want you to know, I did not miss that. Every time you took a breath instead of speaking words meant to wound, I stood beside you. Every time you laid your offense at my feet instead of throwing it like a weapon, you came into greater alignment with my heart. Your refusal to seek revenge allowed me to step in with justice. And that justice may not look the way the world expects it to. It looks like redemption. It looks like healing. It looks like protecting your soul from becoming the very thing that hurt you. Because of your decision, your peace has become your power. It has turned into a shield around your mind. It has brought clarity into your thoughts. It has made your presence safe for others, because they can sense that you do not carry hidden hostility. You've become a vessel where my spirit can rest, because you've refused to partner with strife. And now, I'm surrounding you with environments that match what you've cultivated within. You will no longer have to fight to be heard. I am raising your voice through peace, not pride. I am preparing a table for you in full view of those who tried to diminish you, not for revenge, but for redemption. You did not stoop to the level of those who tried to drag you down. You rose, quietly, steadily, with grace as your anchor. That rise will not go unnoticed. I am lifting you higher not as a reaction to your pain, but as a reward for your peace. The dignity you've carried through injustice is unlocking blessings reserved for those who choose the narrow path. You didn't escalate the pain, you ended it with silence. And I am answering that silence with favor. Your peace has paved the way for a future that won't be entangled by past grudges. You stepped into freedom. You've shown the world that you don't need to prove anything, you are already approved by me. And now, that peace you carried is about to carry you into new relationships, into fresh environments, into the fullness of everything I've been preparing while you kept your heart clean. You let me fight for you. And because you did, you will never walk alone into your next chapter. I go before you, and I am proud of the way you handled what was meant to steal your joy. You chose peace, and for that I'm so deeply happy with you. There was a season when your needs felt urgent, when lack pressed close and you longed for change, real, tangible answers to real, tangible struggles. You could have turned to me only with requests, only for relief, only for provision. Many do. It would have been understandable. You had things you hoped for, breakthroughs you believed for, mountains you needed to move. But what you did instead revealed the depth of your heart. You sought me not just for what I could do, you sought me for who I am. And that choice, my beloved, revealed a kind of love that is rare and precious to me. You came to me without an agenda. You sat with me when there was nothing in your hands and everything in your heart. You didn't worship because the outcome was guaranteed. You worshiped because you knew I was worthy, whether or not circumstances changed. You didn't only chase miracles, you chased presence. You didn't just pray for solutions, you prayed for closeness. And that longing for intimacy above intervention moved me more than you'll ever understand. It showed me that your faith wasn't a transaction. It was a relationship. You could have made your prayers all about breakthrough. You could have made your pursuit all about fixing what felt broken. But instead, you laid your needs before me like an offering and then said, "Even if, I'll still stay." That phrase, "even if," is one I treasure. It's what I heard from your spirit long before it reached your lips. Even if the door stays closed, even if the healing takes longer, even if nothing shifts, I still want you. You gave me that kind of love. Not conditional, not temporary, but deep and enduring. And that love is the very reason you're standing stronger today. You were chasing outcomes, you were chasing connection. And now, what you're experiencing is the reward of seeking the giver, not just the gift. That's why your peace has deepened. That's why your joy doesn't fluctuate with the situation. Because you've learned to anchor yourself in me, not in what I do. And because of that, everything I pour into your life from here forward will be rooted in something unshakable. Your motives are pure. Your pursuit is clean. And so, the blessings coming won't become burdens. They won't distract or distance you from me, they'll draw you even closer. Many chased my hand, but you sought my face. You wanted me, my voice, my nearness. You wanted the quiet moments others overlook. You found value not in getting more from me, but in giving more of yourself to me. And that kind of relationship creates space for the supernatural. Because I can entrust more to those who won't forget me when it comes. And now I want to bless you not because you begged, but because you believe. I want to release provision into areas where you remain faithful without reward. I want to open doors not because you knocked endlessly, but because you rested in my timing. Your spirit has proven itself anchored. You've learned to wait without withering. You've stayed devoted without demanding. And I'm going to honor that devotion. So prepare your heart not just for answered prayers, but for deeper encounters. I'm drawing even nearer. I'm opening layers of revelation that only seekers find. You didn't just want my help, you wanted my heart. And I'm giving it to you. You've become my friend, not just my follower. And I will walk with you in a new way, whispering direction, releasing discernment, surrounding you with favor not for show, but for purpose. You didn't seek me because of desperation. You sought me out of desire. And now that I have your heart, I will lead it into places you never imagined, not as a reward for performance, but as an overflow of intimacy. You wanted me, and I want you to know, I have always wanted you to. That's why I'm so happy with you. There were moments when you listened, and all you could hear was stillness. No sign, no voice, no confirmation, just quiet. You stood in a place where your heart longed for an answer, but heaven felt far away. You were not doubting me, you were searching. You were not turning away, you were leaning in. You weren't angry, you were aching to know I was near. And though the silence stretched on longer than you hoped, you didn't walk away. You stayed. You kept showing up in the quiet spaces where others may have left. And in doing so, you met me in one of the holiest places of all, stillness. You didn't need noise to feel me. You didn't need fireworks to believe I was listening. You learned to trust me when all your senses gave you no evidence. That kind of trust is sacred. It isn't built on miracles, it's built on maturity. While many run from the silence, you found a rhythm in it. You allowed it to form something in your spirit that loud moments never could. You discovered that my presence isn't proven by volume. It's recognized in the calm, the breath between words, the space where faith stretches and deepens without explanation. I know how hard that was. I know how you cried in secret, wondering if I had heard your last prayer. I know how you questioned whether you had missed a signal, whether you were still on the right path, whether I was still walking beside you. But through all that wondering, you didn't disconnect. You whispered my name even when you couldn't feel me. You opened the word and waited. You listened, even when it felt like no one was speaking. And in that waiting, your ears grew sharper. Not for dramatic signs, but for my whisper. That is what I've been building in you all along. You see, the silence wasn't absence, it was invitation. An invitation to know me without filters, without demands, without distraction. It was in that quiet space that I rewrote the rhythm of your soul. I quieted the storms within you even before the ones around you changed. I strengthened your spirit not with shouts, but with serenity. And now, that stillness has become your strength. It has become your compass. It has become the space where my voice is no longer drowned out by emotion or environment. You've learned how to wait well. You've developed a kind of listening that doesn't panic in stillness. That's why I can now trust you with greater revelation. Because you won't treat silence as rejection, you'll treat it as sacred. And that posture, that depth, is what sets you apart. You don't chase noise, you dwell in peace, You're not addicted to answers, you are anchored in assurance. And because of that, the direction I release to you next won't just lead you, it will transform you. I'm revealing things now that I hid in the quiet, gifts that can only be opened by those who chose patience over panic. The wisdom you've gained in the waiting will serve you for years to come. You'll be a voice of calm for those who fear silence. You'll teach others how to hear me in the stillness, how to stand when everything feels unconfirmed, how to recognize that still waters are where I restore the soul. And most of all, I want you to know this: I was never far. I was in the silence all along. I was holding you when you thought I was hiding. I was forming you when you felt forgotten. I was listening to every unspoken word. And now, as this season shifts, you'll see how much was actually happening in the quiet. You met me there, and I met you. And because you didn't run from the silence, I'm surrounding you now with clarity, direction, and a new outpouring of my presence. You didn't just survive the silence, you found me in it. And for that, my beloved, I am so deeply happy with you. There was a time when the easy thing would have been to wear a mask to cover the parts of yourself that felt too messy, too fragile, too raw. You could have presented a version of yourself that looked strong while quietly struggling inside. You could have buried the pain, denied the weakness, and continued on as if nothing was wrong. What you didn't. You brought me the pieces. One by one, you laid them down, your fears, your habits, your shame, your regrets, not with polished words but with trembling honesty. And that honesty, that vulnerability, invited me to do what I love most: transform. You didn't try to fix yourself before coming close. You didn't pretend you had it all together before opening your heart. Instead, you brought me your real self. And that realness became the gateway to healing. You let me enter the places others never saw, the private wounds, the hidden battles, the cycles you didn't know how to break. You stopped running. You stopped hiding. You opened the door and said, "Come in." And I did. I stepped into the darkness without hesitation, not to condemn you, but to dwell with you, to shine light on what you thought disqualified you from closeness with me. You were never too broken for me. You were never too far gone. I never flinched at your flaws. I was never waiting for perfection, only permission. And you gave it. You let me in, even when it hurt. You trusted me with the parts of your heart that others had trampled. You allowed me to sit with you in your shame until it dissolved in my love. And from that place, we rebuilt. Not with pressure, not with performance, but with presence. My presence became your safe place, and your surrender became the soil for your healing. You weren't changed overnight, but you were changed. Slowly, deeply, profoundly. You didn't need to shout about it. The fruit began to show. Your reactions softened. Your thoughts began to align with peace. Your inner battles became quieter. And though the process was slow, it was sacred. You let me lead you through the pain without rushing past it. You allowed me to unravel what wasn't built on truth and rewrite the story you were living under. Now, you're walking in freedom, not because you've become flawless, but because you've become fearless in your transparency with me. You no longer carry shame like a shadow. You carry grace like a garment. You are no longer burdened by who you were, you are awakened to who I say you are. And that awakening is changing everything. You're standing taller now. You're speaking with more clarity. You're choosing peace over patterns. That is transformation, not from behavior modification, but from spiritual renovation. And I want you to know, I'm not finished. What I've begun in you will continue. The deeper layers will unfold, not as pressure, but as promise. There is more wholeness to walk into. There are more lies to replace with truth. There is more beauty to discover in the places that once felt barren. But now, you're not afraid of the process. You've tasted the goodness on the other side of surrender. And now you understand that every layer I touch is another layer I heal. Because you let me change you. You'll carry hope for others still hiding. Your story will not be one of perfection but of permission. You'll give others the courage to come out of hiding too. And as they watch your life, they'll see what healing really looks like, not pretending, but presence. Not image, but intimacy. Not pressure, but peace. You brought me what others might have thrown away, and I've made it into something holy. And I'm not just proud of the healing, I'm proud of your willingness to be healed. A choice to open your soul instead of protecting your image is what changed everything. And that's why I'm smiling over you today. Because you let me touch what hurt. And now, your life is beginning to reflect what only my hands could have restored. You chose healing over hiding. And for that, I'm so incredibly happy with you. There was a stretch of time when everything around you pointed to disappointment. Promises felt far off. Doors didn't open. Prayers remained unanswered. And day after day, the weight of unmet expectations tried to suffocate the flame of your hope. It would have been understandable to stop believing, to pack away the vision, to silence the desire before it disappointed you again. But you didn't. You kept your hope alive not because you saw evidence, but because you refused to let delay rewrite the truth I had spoken to you. You held on when your hands were trembling. You believed when believing made you feel vulnerable. You looked forward when the past tried to convince you to stay stuck. And every time you chose to hope again, something beautiful happened in the spiritual realm. Your hope wasn't passive, it was warfare. It pushed back the narrative of defeat. It stood in defiance against the voice of despair. It declared, I still believe there is more, even when your surroundings said otherwise. And that kind of hope anchored in me, not outcomes, is what has kept your spirit from collapse. Hope is not a feeling, it's a discipline. And you've practiced it when it cost you something. While others celebrated what they received, you nurtured what you were still waiting for. You watered seeds that hadn't broken through the soil yet. You spoke life into dreams that had been sleeping. You smiled at the future with no visible reason to. And that kind of heart posture is what I treasure. Not the kind that waits with bitterness, but the kind that watches with expectation. You may not realize it, but your hope has been growing roots. Deep, unseen foundations that are now ready to support the next things I'm about to release. The reason you haven't collapsed is because your hope was never shallow. It was planted in me, and I have been sustaining it even when you couldn't feel its strength. And now, because you've held on, you're about to step into the fulfillment of things you once only whispered about in the dark. But even before that fulfillment comes, I want you to know, your hope, by itself, has already pleased me. You didn't put it on display for attention. You didn't pretend to be hopeful, you truly were. And even in your weak moments, you never surrendered your faith completely. That steady flicker of hope in your soul, sometimes faint, sometimes fierce, was enough. I saw it. I blessed it. I guarded it when the storms came. And now, that light is starting to spread again. Your hope is catching momentum. It's about to turn into movement. Because you kept hoping, even when logic said to give up. I'm bringing acceleration into the areas where things felt delayed. I'm breathing life into the dreams you thought might never wake up. I'm aligning timing, people, and opportunities in ways you couldn't have orchestrated on your own. And it's not because you forced it, it's because you stayed ready in your heart. Your hope didn't die in the waiting. It matured. It deepened. It became more resilient than ever before. And now, you'll carry that strength with you, not just into your own fulfillment, but into the lives of those around you. Others will borrow your hope when they feel weak. They'll look at you and say, if they could believe through all that, maybe I can too. That's what your hope has created, ripples of courage far beyond your own story. You never stopped expecting me to show up, and I never stopped watching you wait. Your hope has been seen, valued, preserved, and now it will be honored. Watch what I do next. You won't just receive what you hoped for. You'll overflow with more than you thought possible. Because you chose to keep your eyes lifted when it was easier to look away. And that's why, with all my heart, I say again, I'm so happy with you. There were moments when you did have the words. You felt the ache pressing deep, emotions tangled in confusion, weariness pulling at your spirit. And you could have hidden from me, You could have put on a brave face, said all the right things, and tried to impress me with polished prayers. But you didn't. You came just as you were. You brought me your pain raw, unfiltered, and trembling. You didn't hold back your disappointment. You didn't pretend you were fine. You didn't run from me, you ran to me with the truth of how you felt. And the truth became your offering. I wasn't offended by your honesty, I was moved by it. You trusted me enough to be real. That means more to me than you know. You weren't trying to perform for my approval, you already believed you had it. That's why you could tell me the hard things. You spoke of your weariness, your questions, even your doubts, not as rebellion, but as surrender. And in doing so, you deepened our relationship. You showed me that you didn't just come to me when everything was beautiful, you came to me when everything felt broken too. Your transparency became a door I could walk through. It invited me into places religion tells you to clean up before letting me see. But I never needed perfection, I needed permission. And your honest heart gave it to me. That's where healing begins. Not in pretending, but in presence. Not in hiding the pain, but in holding it before me with open hands. You didn't try to fix yourself before speaking. You didn't wait until you had it all figured out. You simply told me the truth. And I met you there not with shame, but with understanding. You've learned that I'm not fragile. I don't flinch at tears. I don't pull back when your heart breaks. I draw nearer. I sit beside you. I listen without interrupting. I weep when you weep. And then, I begin to restore. Slowly, gently, tenderly. Your honesty is not a weakness, it's a gateway. It brings depth to our connection, authenticity to your worship, and strength to your spirit. It's the soil where real transformation begins. And I want you to know that those moments of honesty, those quiet cries, those whispered questions, those sighs when words failed you were all heard. They reach me. I collected them like treasure. Because they were pure. They weren't rehearsed or polished, they were real. And I'm responding to every one of them. Not always with immediate answers, but always with presence. I'm weaving responses into your journey. I'm turning your raw moments into redemptive movements. Because of your openness, I've been able to pour into you more deeply. You're not just receiving knowledge, you're receiving intimacy. You've learned that honesty with me is safety, not risk. And now, your heart is learning how to remain open even while it heals. That's not common. That's not easy. But you've made it possible by inviting me into everything, not just the joys, but the struggles too. Now, I'm going to use your honesty as a bridge for others. You'll become a safe place for people who have been pretending for too long. You'll carry grace that speaks louder than advice. People will come to you not for perfection, but for peace. And you will know how to give it because you've lived it. You've walked with me in the dark, and now you will carry light into the shadows of others. You stayed honest, and that's why healing found you. You stayed real, and that's why restoration is surrounding you now. And I want you to hear me clearly. I am proud of you. Not because you hid your pain, but because you handed it to me. I never asked you to be invincible, I asked you to be willing. And you were. You were. That's why I'm so happy with you. In a world that glorifies busyness, that praises constant movement, and celebrates never-ending progress, you made a different choice. You chose stillness. Not because you lacked ambition or lost your desire to grow, but because you sensed my voice inviting you to stop, breathe, and be with me. And while others rushed, while doors clanged open and people hustled forward, you took a step back, not out of fear, but out of reverence. You decided that peace mattered more than pace. You gave up the need to keep up, and instead you stepped into the rhythm of grace. I watched how difficult that decision was at times. Everything around you seemed to scream, do more, do more, earn more. And part of your heart wrestled with the question, am I falling behind? But in those quiet moments, you heard me remind you that fruitfulness isn't measured by how fast you move, but by how closely you follow. You didn't choose passivity, you chose presence. You chose to be where I was, even when it looked like you weren't advancing. And that choice created something in you that rushing never could: discernment, depth, and direction. You stopped striving not because you lacked dreams, but because you trusted that my timing could accomplish what your effort never would. You put down the pressure to perform, and you picked up the posture of rest. That rest was not laziness, it was faith in action. It was the expression of a heart that believed I was already working even when you were waiting. While others exhausted themselves trying to open doors, you placed your hand in mine and let me lead. That's why you've come farther than it seems. Because stillness in me always leads to supernatural movement. I know you felt overlooked sometimes. I know you wondered if stillness meant invisibility. But I want you to know, nothing about your decision was hidden from me. I was there when you chose to be quiet while others spoke loudly. I was with you when you slowed your pace while others sprinted. And every moment you spent with me, every still morning, every silent prayer, every gentle pause became a sanctuary of trust that heaven never missed. Now, that stillness is bearing fruit. What others tried to build through striving, I'm establishing in your life through surrender. What seemed delayed is actually right on time. The strength you've gained isn't just endurance, it's alignment. You're no longer chasing opportunities, you're attracting what's been waiting for your spirit to be ready. That's what rest does. It prepares. It heals. It roots. And you are rooted now in something so much deeper than mere progress. You are grounded in me. And because of that, what's coming will not shake you. You will not be pulled into the storm of pressure, noise, or comparison. You've tasted peace, and now you know how to protect it. You've learned that doing more doesn't always equal becoming more. And now, your identity is anchored not in what you accomplish, but in who you are in me. I'm moving on your behalf now, not because you demanded it, but because you waited for it. I'm opening doors not because you forced them, but because you honored their timing. You will walk into rooms of influence not because you pushed your way in, but because peace carried you there. Stillness has made you steady, and steadiness is rare. The world might not celebrate the pace you chose, but I do, because it meant you trusted me more than the system. You believed in my process more than in pressure, and that's why I can trust you with what's next. You didn't trade your peace for speed. You didn't sacrifice presence for performance. You stayed still, and that stillness was your offering, and I accepted it. Now watch how I move. Quietly, powerfully,